They call it the ribbon of ink. Route 44. To most, it's just a stretch of asphalt connecting the sleepy towns of Massachusetts and Connecticut. A utility road. A way to get from point A to point B. But to those who drive it after the clock strikes 3, it is a graveyard that hasn't been buried yet. I've lived in New England my entire life. I grew up on stories of the Bridgewater Triangle, of strange lights in the sky and voices in the woods that sounded like family members who had been dead for decades. I never believed them. I thought they were tales told to keep children from wandering too far into the pines. I was a man of logic, a man of concrete facts. My name is David. I'm a technician. I spend my days and often my nights fixing the machines that keep our modern world running. 3 months ago, I was coming back from a late-night emergency repair near Seekonk. The air was thick and heavy, the kind of New England fog that feels like a wet wool blanket draped over your face. I decided to take the shortcut through Route 44. The GPS on my phone was flickering, the blue dot jumping sporadically across the screen as if it couldn't decide where I was. I didn't think much of it. Technology fails in the fog. It's a fact of life. But as I passed Anawan Rock, the atmosphere changed. The heater in my car was blasting at 80 degrees, yet I could see my own breath. A thin silver mist began to crawl along the dashboard. That's when I saw him. He was standing on the white line right where the shoulder of the road disappears into the black mud of the swamp. He was tall. He had a shock of matted, fiery red hair that seemed to catch the light of my high beams, even though the rest of him was a shadow. He wore a red flannel shirt, the colors faded and dirty, and heavy denim jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in 40 years. He didn't have his thumb out, he didn't wave. He just stood there, his arms hanging limp at his sides, watching my car approach with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I should have kept driving, I know that now. Every survival instinct I possessed, every ancient lizard brain warning of danger, was screaming at me to floor the accelerator. But there was a gravity to him, a pull. Against my own will, my foot moved to the brake. The tires crunched on the gravel as I pulled over. The passenger door didn't just open. It felt like it was pulled open by a vacuum. The man climbed in. He didn't sit down so much as he simply occupied the space. The smell hit me immediately. It wasn't the smell of a living man. It was the scent of a cellar after a flood. Damp earth, rotting leaves, and a metallic copper tang that reminded me of old blood. "Where to?" I asked. My voice sounded small, fragile. He didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead through the windshield, his eyes wide and unblinking. He raised a hand, the skin was so pale it was almost translucent, and pointed a single shaking finger down the road. "Just ahead," he rasped. His voice wasn't a voice. It was the sound of dry leaves being crushed under a heavy boot. We drove. For 10 minutes, the only sound was the rhythmic thumping of the tires over the expansion joints in the road. Thump, thump, thump. I tried to keep my eyes on the road, but I could feel his gaze. He wasn't looking at the road anymore. He was looking at me. I glanced at my side view mirror to check for traffic. My heart stopped. In the mirror, the passenger seat was empty. I could see the headrest. I could see the window behind it. But the man sitting 6 inches away from me, he had no reflection. I looked back at the seat. He was there. I could see the individual red hairs on his beard. I could see the way his chest moved with a wet, struggling breath. But the mirror showed nothing. My hands began to shake so violently I almost lost control of the wheel. Then he spoke again. But he didn't use words. He began to giggle. It started as a low, bubbling sound in his throat. Then it grew. It became a high-pitched, manic cackle that filled the entire cabin of the car. It wasn't the sound of a person who found something funny. It was the sound of something that had been waiting a very long time to be heard. Lassa. He turned his head. I heard the sound of bones snapping, a wet grinding noise as his neck rotated much further than it should have been able to. He looked at me, his eyes now entirely black and his mouth stretched into a grin that was far too wide for his face. "You're almost home, David," he whispered. I slammed on the brakes. The car fishtailed, the back end swinging out toward the trees. I didn't care if I crashed, I just needed him out. When the car finally skidded to a halt in the mud, I lunged for the passenger door and threw it open. The seat was empty. There were no footprints in the mud. There was no sound of a man running into the woods. There was only the smell of the damp earth and the fading echo of that hideous, giggling laugh drifting away in the fog. I spent the next week in a fever. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red flannel shirt. I went to the Rehoboth Public Library. I dug through the microfiche until my eyes burned. And there I found him. Joseph Miller, a local man who had been walking home from a bar on Route 44. He had been hit by a driver who never stopped. The paper described him as a friendly man with a bushy red beard and a favorite red flannel shirt. But the paper didn't mention what I found on my floor mat the next morning. I found a rusted pocket knife. It was warm to the touch. And when I turned it over, the initials J.M. were freshly carved into the wood. I don't take shortcuts anymore. Because on Route 44, the dead don't just stay in the ground. They're still looking for a ride home.